Hello, I'm Tony Guida. This is My New York. Here's a definition of Judaism I bet you have not heard. It's the religion that eschews pork and enables us to write television comedy. Credit that line to journalist, author, humorist Joyce Wadler. Joyce finds humor in the most unlikely places: breast and ovarian cancer, both of which she survived, dementia and congestive heart failure, which her aged mother, now battles. Her writing brims with mordant wit and a poignancy that can break your heart. Joyce Wadler, Whistling Past the Graveyard, next. Joyce Wadler, welcome.
Thank you.
It's a delight to have you here.
Thank you.
That quote that I began with about Judaism comes from one of your columns, which is called, or was called, I Was Misinformed, which you wrote for the New York Times for a number of years, and they just killed it, and they should be, well, they should be beaten up for doing that.
Thank you, thank you. And I'd like anyone watching to write Dean Baquet, I think it's DBAQUET at nytimes.com, and say, it's terrible. Bring back that.
Bring back I Was Misinformed. I'm going to do that. Dean Baquet is the managing editor.
D. Baquet at nytimes. Can we run it?
Yes. Sure.
At nytimes.com.
We'll call him right now.
What were you thinking,
Bring
Dean?
a phone out here. We'll call
By the
Dean.
way, Jim Dwyer, you killed Jim Dwyer. Were you guys crazy?
Oh, my
Insane.
God. Anyway, the quote, it comes from I Was Misinformed column from 2012, and the name of that column was Unfriending Before Facebook.
Oh, yes.
And how it was done, and apparently your mother just did it magnificently. Talk about that.
Yeah, my mother was the queen. I mean, diplomatically, no one could match her. So, this is some background. I grew up in the Catskills, in a town called Fleischmann's, where I used to joke and say that they had a sign as you pulled off Route 28 and were coming into Fleischmann's, which was, entering Fleischmann's, say anything you want. And that was, because that was pretty much normal behavior. But even in this crowd, my mother was a standout for a person who just liked to shake things up and make trouble just for the joy of making trouble. My father, on the other hand, was really a worrier. So you can imagine what a fantastic, tranquil union this was. Anyway, if my mother didn't like you, she didn't like you for life. And if she was annoyed, she didn't hold it in. Nobody had to say that it's unhealthy, Millie, to hold it in. So
She let you know.
She let you know. So I think I'm 11 or 12, and my mother finds out that her favorite brother, who lives in the city, has had a heart attack. And his daughter, who was my mother's favorite niece, my gorgeous cousin, Cookie, nickname, who had a lot of boyfriends, came up a lot to the Catskills to.
Is this the one she referred to as ravishing?
Yeah. It was really gorgeous Roberta. I mean, she had been a beauty queen in Yonkers. She was stunning. Her daughter ended up being a Miss Israel. I mean, there's gorgeous women. So Cookie's about 19, and my mother has to start, calling motels, actually several motels.
To find her.
To track
tell her
down
about
Cookie, who's shacked up with her latest boyfriend. And when she finds her, she says, how does this go? Roberta, you tramp. Your father is dead and you killed him.
Hello? That's unfriending.
That was it. So, Cookie didn't have to look on Facebook and say, gee, I'm not hearing from Aunt Millie lately. I wonder if I could have done something that offended her. She knew. It was right out there.
Right.
She had, my mother's only full brother, Aaron, lived in LA and had become a Jehovah's Witness. And my mother never would have known this if I hadn't gone to visit at 13 and he hadn't kind of converted me. I thought, well, that's interesting, Came back, told my mother about it. She called up screaming, Aaron, you are dead to me.
Dead to me.
Dead
Yes.
to me, dead to me, and dead to me was serious. I mean, dead to me happened a lot in the Catskills, you know. And she never talked to him again for something like, I think he lived for another 30 years, you know. And his wife was dying. I said, Ma, don't you think you should call up your brother? His wife is dying. You know, we could use dead to me.
Dead to me.
So dead to me. She was
Borscht Belt humor. I mean, your mother wasn't doing Borscht Belt humor. She was originating. This is who she is.
No, this is who she was. I mean,
Right.
I don't know that. I mean, she wasn't standing up and doing a bit. It was
No.
just stuff that was funny in its awfulness, which happened a lot up there, really. I mean, at least during the season, during the summer.
Funny in its awfulness is a theme that runs as a through line of your writing and your career, in a way. Not in a way, it is.
Well, that's what I do, I guess, in between reporting.
Right, in between reporting. And funny in awful is has a lot to do with Millie, Joyce's mother, who's now 91.
About to be 92 if she
And
makes
very
it.
ill. And you wrote a column, and this gives you a sense of how Joyce treats these serious subjects, which she understands are serious, but she has a way of making you smile. She wrote a column about her mother in 2014 about how she had a stroke. And you talk about, afterwards the stroke and I guess dementia came on. And she's telling you as you go visit her in the nursing home, I've got Ebola, I've got ISIS.
Yes. Well, this was my first experience with stroke and dementia close up. So I started out trying to be logical with her, and say, no, Ma. ISIS isn't a disease. It's a terrorist group, but she'd been watching a lot of Fox News, and it was ISIS, and she kind of, had taken it in. But then later on, I realized, one of my girlfriends, whose mother had also had dementia, was a few years ahead of me, in her experience, said, now when somebody has dementia, you don't challenge their reality. It just distresses them. What you do, it's kind of you get in the tub with them. You get in, if they're distressed about something, you try and make it better. First you soothe them, and then you distract them. You try and take it to something else.
Yeah. As you say, it was your first experience, and the column is heartbreaking. It's funny, and it's also heartbreaking because you go around, you and your, I guess, is it brother or cousin, or friend, stay at her apartment while she's first in the nursing home and the hospital. And in a frenzy, it seems, you're organizing her closet.
Yeah.
And you're just going late into the night and all through the night, organizing her closet. And it seems like all you want to do is distract yourself from this, from what's going on in reality.
Well, yes and no. I mean, when this thing hits, because my mother really had been if it was Reader's Digest, which she put, by the way above the New York Times and, list of important periodicals, my mother would have been one of, your unforgettable characters. She was an early feminist. She did like outraging people. She traveled around the world. She was an instinctively smart woman and a very combative woman and a very competent woman. And all of a sudden, this is gone. So I couldn't sleep. I'd be up at like 3:30 in the morning, wandering around, and her closet was a mess. So I thought, well, I'll just organize it for her. Now, I knew she had a stroke that left her unable to walk, unable to understand time or distance. I knew she was never, logically, she was never going to come home.
But that had nothing to do with
it. But it had nothing to do with the emotional thing. So I was just, trying to make things nice and organize her chaotic closet. And my friend, Lou Grossberger, another writer, my best friend, had come down. At one point, he heard me. You know, it was going on for 3 or 4 days, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm trying to make it nice for when she comes home."
Yeah.
And then I realized what I was trying really to do, and I said, "I'm trying to fix it. I'm trying to make believe it can be fixed."
That's the end. Those are the ending lines of the column. I'm making it nice for when she comes home, and then I amend it. I'm trying to fix it. I'm trying to make believe it can be fixed. Yeah. 2018, a column about your mom and the illness and all the things you have to go through to cope with it and cope with her. And this column, I love the title of this one, was called Farewell, My Lovely, Inheritance.
Oh, God, yes.
And, you know, I mean, I think how many people in our audience perhaps have gone through this where someone, a relative, a close relative is ill and the bills are piling up and the money is disappearing.
Yes, it may be the last dark secret, because, you know, in New York, everybody will tell you everything, what kind of sex they had left. Well, everything but how much money they make.
Right.
You know? Maybe that's the other taboo. And this kind of goes into it. You know, my mother and I talked about money a lot. I was cautious and I saved a lot. She was just a brilliant kind of crackpot investor who would see something going on in the culture, invest in it. I think my father, because I'll talk about money, I think my father had left her with maybe $20,000 and she parlayed it into $1 million.
Wow.
Yeah, she was.
Talk about
No, she was.
investor. Forget about the crackpot.
She was good. I mean, it's too bad. We have the same broker, and she was always saying, "Well, yeah, your mother is so wild, and I know you're conservative." It was like, so Mom and I would talk about, you know, what was going on in our lives, and you know, we'd say, I'd talk about some extravagant vacation, and whenever a big thing came up, we were very proud that we could afford it, because really we were working class, you know, Catskills,
Sure.
you know, Jews, and my mother would say, "Rich or poor, it's good to have money." And then we would say together, money is honey. You know? Okay, so, and when...
Well, meanwhile, something like $17,000 a month is
for the nursing home, yeah. So when people, like my college roommates, would say, you know, I always wanted to have a little country house, but I could never quite bring myself to feel secure enough to do it, you know. And my roommates would say, college roommates used to say, "What are you worried about? You know, your mother's going to leave you a fortune." And I would always say very proudly, no. You know, an adult has to be responsible for themselves. Then all of a sudden, I am writing checks for $16,000 a month to the nursing home.
right.
It comes to $180,000 plus another $30,000 a year. And I'm seeing, I mean, all of a sudden you're writing those checks, you're just sort of seeing, you know, the money. It's like, it's
Farewell,
very visual,
my lovely,
very
inheritance.
visual, yes. Great big goose wings, it's flying away. And I know it's terrible, but, you know, I'm thinking, God damn, Ma, you know, I mean, I'm supposed to be her advocate and making sure she has the best quality of life. But sometimes I'm thinking, you know, you can't walk. Is your quality of life really that good? And I'm finding that I'm very resentful.
Well, the column is full of the dark thoughts that you're alluding to here. The dark thoughts that are not appropriate, you would think, you know, PC in today's term. The dark thoughts of the caregiver, the daughter, the caregiver, and you even have Freud in this column.
Oh, yes. Do you have it in front of you?
No.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I know the quote.
Well, take it.
Well, you know, she's. Well, do the setup. I mean, you're both concerned about your mother, and your heart is good, but on the same time, you're having these dark thoughts about, oh, you shouldn't be this kind of person, shouldn't have these thoughts, and you have Freud appearing saying, the unconscious, she is like a septic tank.
Yes, the unconscious. Yes, there's always my good self, my saintly self, because as a caregiver, you're like an instant self, and the rotten, you know, kid that wants that house in the country, and I was saying that nobody really wants to acknowledge these terrible thoughts in your head of, I want the money. But, you know, you wake up in the morning and there they are, you know, on the pillow beside you and nobody else is in the bed. And clearly it is you. It is you. And it was about my resentment. And I thought I would be crucified, because there's nothing really the readers of the New York Times like better than crucifying a reporter, you know. I mean, but I got a lot of letters from support. And one woman wrote me on Facebook and she said, you know, I read your column about feeling resentful about losing the money, and I had the same thoughts, and I thought I was a monster, and now I feel so much better because I can see I'm not the only monster. So
that's a great letter.
So it's so wonderful. I mean, if anybody thinks I don't do service pieces, I want you to know. dbackay@nytimes.com. Big mistake, boys.
Big mistake. The
Big
column used to be
mistake.
called "I Was Misinformed," but Dean
Yeah.
Backay killed it.
Where is it now?
You know, so much of what you talk about, or the themes, the
Yeah.
meat of what you talk about involving your mother is so close to you because of what you've been through and the writing you've done about yourself. You have a very unusual symbiosis with cancer.
Well, it isn't like I asked it out and I wanted to be involved.
No, of course not.
No. I mean,
You wrote you may recall that she wrote a book. Joyce wrote a book called My Breast back in when
91. I had it in 91. I think in 92 it ran in New York Magazine.
It ran in
started
New
as
York Magazine,
pieces.
cover story, 2 issues in a row, and then
Yeah.
it became a book, and then became a movie, TV movie.
Yes. Meredith Baxter was me because she looked so much. We looked so much alike. I wasn't blonde then, you know.
I see the resemblance.
She's taller. And then about 4 years later, I found out that I had advanced ovarian cancer. And
First it was breast cancer.
first it was breast, and then it was advanced ovarian, and that really scared me because I didn't know, you know, a lot of people. I know a lot of people that had breast cancer, but I didn't know anyone who had and survived ovarian cancer. Except for Gilda Radner. And people were saying to me, you know, you ought to read Gilda Radner's book. It's so inspirational. And I'd say, she died. This isn't the ending. This really is.
I don't care for the ending.
This isn't the ending I want. But I didn't. You know, I had really superb care. Memorial Sloan Kettering. I mean, my doctor, Larry Norton, caught this cancer on a blood test. My gynecologist missed it. Stage 3B.
That's scary.
Baby. Yeah, it was. So I get to live, and around this time they are doing, they're starting to discover the genetic predispositions, and it turns out that I am carrying the BRCA1 genetic mutation that gives you a greater risk of breast, ovarian, prostate, which isn't going to hit me, though it did kill my father. That's probably the Wadler line it's going down. And I think colon. So there you are.
But, yeah, and again, Joyce writes about this, you know, sharp-eyed reporting in what you wrote about your cancers, but gut-busting funny, too, at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, some of it is, I'm trying to come up with examples now of, you know, what was so awful it was funny, but I do remember picking up my slides from the first hospital when I had breast cancer, because I had to take them over to Sloan Kettering for a second opinion to make sure it was the kind of breast cancer as diagnosed, and realizing that I was carrying this important stuff, and that if I lost it, you know, what was going to happen? You know, would it be like, you know, the guy who loses his cello, you know, in the subway? You always see them in the Daily News.
Right.
You know, they really
Some
have to
good
hate
Samaritan
the cello.
comes along
Yeah,
and
and they
says, "Hey,
find
I
it,
found your
and you know, yeah, what I have to put up
But
signs.
cello's a big thing.
I know, but it's
Slides
like,
are
you know, like signs in the village, you know, lost cat, you know, lost cancer signs.
lost cancers.
Yeah, I mean, a
cells.
lot of it was
Slides.
you know, just struck me as funny. And I think that funny or a point of view is something you're born with, like your eye color, that you just come out that way, and there's really not much to be done about it.
Well, you are from the Catskills, which
yeah.
is the home of just fantastic humor. Talk to us about, I think you wrote, did you write a piece for Esquire about Borscht Belt humor?
I did. And I didn't quite realize until I was doing it how many of the people I grew up with were really funny, because I just thought they were really normal. For instance.
Well, you come from Fleischmann's where the sign said,
Yes.
say anything.
Yeah, again, that was more of a summer season thing. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
for Fleischmann's in the 50s and early 60s, think kind of Dirty Dancing, but the side of the mountains that's failing. You know, so they're not doing well. So we've got a lot of Jewish refugees still with the letters on their arm, and these are some tough customers because they have made it out, and you can say luck was involved, but a lot of the time it's just tough. Anyway, one of my brothers is working for one of the seasonal butchers that comes up. Let's call him Myron, and he, you know, he's delivering the you know, the meat and the eggs and the stuff to, you know, the hotels. He's making the delivery, and a lady calls him, the owner, you know, calls him into the kitchen and breaks open an egg, and she says, "Look at this. You know, the eggs you bring me last time, it's green." And David looks at it and says, it's green, all right. So he goes back to the butcher and he says, you know, listen, I went over to, you know, whatever it was, Roaring Brook. Lady calls me into the kitchen, says the eggs are green, and the eggs are green. Butcher looks at him and says, when business is slow, they have time to look at the eggs. I mean, it's like,
Not in the summer rush.
there's no guilt. He shows my brother how to kind of stretch the hamburger for, I think it was a Boy Scout camp. And he actually puts in something that is sawdust-like and blood from, I don't know, I guess something that he pours in. And he says, anybody can move steak. To move hamburger, that's something. Now, this wasn't part of a stand-up. This was just Catskills life in the 50s.
Did you ever go to the, did you ever see Mel Brooks at Caesar, any of the famous?
No, they were working the other side.
The other side of the mountain.
The successful side of the mountain. We did have a city cousin who wanted very much to be a tumbler or a DJ over there. So we went with him. I remember once as a little kid going over, you know, because we were going to pack the audience and really, you know, applaud and do that.
Lest you think that all Joyce writes about is death and heartbreak, she also wrote a book about the true story of the M. Butterfly affair, which we really don't have time to go into here now, but that's another piece of her work. She was the New York bureau chief of the Washington Post and contributing editor to Rolling Stone and the Times and everything else, and working on the book about Mom.
Working on a book of sort of, I don't know, the lighthearted side of dementia. You know, people was Reader's Digest. It was I'm working on a book about being a caretaker, which I never was. I didn't have children. And having a mother who is getting progressively wackier, but still recognizes her kids and still has. She's pretty sharp about some things. You know, I brought her up some chopped liver. I think maybe some from Russ's daughters, and then maybe some from Murray's, and my mother, who cannot remember her parents are dead, you know, was eating it and saying, you know, Russ's was better. I said, you know, Ma, you're right. She was right. I thought, really, this is extraordinary. My mother mother can't remember, you know, how far away Florida is from New York, that her parents are dead, but she can remember and compare the taste of chopped liver, and she's right. So,
Well, does the book have a title yet?
but the working title is Ma Wants the Window Seat to Mars.
Yes, and you did have a column about
I
Mom
did have a
going
column,
to
yeah.
Mars,
Yeah.
or wanting to travel to Mars.
Yes, yeah. When my mother sees news stories, she incorporates them into her life. And there had been a news story
Yeah.
about how one day travel to Mars would be possible, and she interpreted that or remembered it as now. And then she remembered it as putting down a $10,000
Right.
deposit. for
It's a
her
lovely, lovely column, another one of Joyce's columns, which ends with, you know, her talking about how she is in charge. Joyce is in charge. I'm in charge, and I can tell her that, you know, and she's saying, I can tell her that this isn't possible, but there's another possibility, and I lean toward a journey that will take her toward the stars. Let's hope. Let's hope.
I hope so.
Joyce Wadler, it's a delight to have you here.
Oh, Tony, it's so nice to be here.
And thanks for being here. And thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.